The matriarch of the Vraxian hive looked down at the creature kneeling in the dust of the arena. She didn't see a warrior. She saw a snack. She extended a claw, serrated, diamond-hard, and longer than the human's entire forearm, and rested the tip gently against the man's soft, pale throat. She laughed, a sound like grinding gears. "Look at you," she sneered, her voice booming across the obsidian coliseum. "Soft skin. Flat teeth. No shell. You don't even have 10 centimeters of natural weaponry on your entire body. How has your species survived the stars when you cannot even cut meat?" The human didn't tremble. He didn't beg. He just checked the laces on his boots, stood up, and looked her in the eye. "We don't need claws, matriarch," he said calmly. "We just need you to get tired." She didn't understand him then. But 3 days later, when her muscles were screaming and her hearts were failing, and she could still hear those rhythmic footsteps behind her, she would learn exactly what he meant. Before we witness the hunt that changed the galaxy, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We upload the best sci-fi stories from across the universe every single day, and you don't want to miss what happens next. Now let's enter the Obsidian Wastes. The throne room of the Vraxian Citadel was not built for comfort. It was built for intimidation. The walls were lined with the skulls of apex predators from a dozen conquered worlds, beasts with fangs the size of sabers and hides that could deflect laser fire. And in the center of it all sat matriarch Zecora. Zecora was a biological masterpiece. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, she was encased in a natural exoskeleton of shifting, iridescent chitin. She was the apex of the Vrax, a species that evolved on a world with crushing gravity and hyper-aggressive fauna. To a Vraxian, worth was measured in lethality. It was measured in the thickness of your armor and the length of your reach. And standing before her was Captain Elias Thorne. Elias was underwhelming. By Vraxian standards, he was pathetic. He stood just under 6 feet, wearing a torn flight suit from his crashed reconnaissance vessel. He had no visible weapons. His sidearm had been stripped away by the guards hours ago. He stood alone in the center of the court, surrounded by Vraxian elites who chattered and clicked in amusement. "This is the Terran threat?" Zecora asked, leaning forward on her throne. The movement caused the floor to vibrate. "My scouts told me the Terran Federation was a peer rival. They told me you commanded fire and void. But I see nothing." She descended from the dais, moving with terrifying speed for a creature of her size. She circled Elias, sniffing the air. "You smell like salt and water," she observed with disgust. "I'm a diplomat, matriarch," Elias said, his voice steady despite the monster looming over him. "And a scout. We didn't come to fight. We came to establish borders." "Borders are drawn with blood," Zecora snapped. She raised her hand. Her index claw extended with a metallic snick, glistening under the harsh violet lights. It was a terrifying weapon, easily 30 centimeters long, curved and serrated. She brought the claw down, stopping just millimeters from Elias's chest. She tapped the fabric of his flight suit. "Do you see this, Terran? This is 10 centimeters of lethal evolution. I can punch through whole metal with this. I can sever a spine with a flick of my wrist." She gestured to her guards, who brandished their own natural weaponry. "My warriors are born with blades. You were born incomplete." She grabbed Elias's chin, forcing him to look at her. "Tell me, little soft flesh, do you even have 10 centimeters of steel in your DNA? Do you have anything that can hurt me? Or are you just a parasite wrapped in cloth?" Elias pulled his head back, stepping out of her grip. He didn't look afraid. He looked calculating. He was looking at her legs, powerful, thick, designed for explosive sprints. He looked at her heavy armor plates. He looked at the humid, dense air of the throne room. "I don't have claws, Zecora," Elias admitted. "And you're right. In a cage fight, you'd kill me in seconds." The court erupted in laughter. Zecora smirked. "At least the prey admits its nature." "But," Elias continued, raising his voice slightly, "we aren't in a cage. We're on a planet. And if you think claws are the only way to kill, you haven't met a human." Zecora's eyes narrowed. She hated the lack of fear in his set. It felt like an insult. "You speak of killing? You." She turned to the crowd. "Let us give the Terran a chance to prove his hidden strength. I will grant him a head start. 1 hour. Into the Obsidian Wastes. If he can survive until the sun set, I will listen to his talk of borders. If I catch him, he is protein." She turned back to Elias, grinning with a mouth full of needle teeth. "Run, little soft thing. Run and pray that 10 centimeters isn't the difference between life and death." Elias didn't argue. He knew the geography of Krylor. He had scanned it from orbit before the crash. The obsidian wastes were a nightmare of volcanic rock, sulfur vents, and scorching heat. The average temperature at midday could boil water in a shallow pool. When the heavy blast doors of the citadel opened, hitting him with a wall of heat, Elias didn't sprint. The Vraxian guards watching from the walls mocked him. They expected him to bolt, to scream, to scramble in a panic. Instead, Elias took a long drink from the water pouch they had graciously allowed him, tightened the straps of his pack, and started to jog. It was a slow, pathetic shuffle. Thump, thump, thump. His stride was short. His breathing was rhythmic. He looked like an old man trying to catch a bus, not a warrior fleeing an apex predator. "Look at him," a guard shouted. "He moves like a wounded grazer. The matriarch will catch him before she even warms up." 1 hour later, the massive gates opened again. Matriarch Zecora burst forth like a cannon shot. The ground cracked under her talons. She moved with the speed of a freight train, covering 50 meters in a single second. She was pure anaerobic power. She roared, a sound of pure predatory joy. She could smell Elias's scent trail. It was fresh, weak, and slow. She expected to find him behind the first ridge of rock, perhaps hiding in a crevice, shivering. She crested the ridge in seconds, her eyes scanning the horizon. Nothing. She sniffed the ground. The trail led straight out into the waste. He hadn't hidden. He hadn't turned. He had just kept moving in a straight line. "Fool," she hissed. "He thinks distance will save him." Zecora engaged her secondary muscles, her speed increasing. She was a sprinter designed to ambush heavy prey in the dense jungles, but she was powerful enough to brute force a chase. She bounded over razor-sharp rocks, her chitin armor deflecting the heat and the stone. 10 minutes. That's all it would take. But 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The heat of the twin suns beat down on her black armor. Vraxian biology was mighty, but it was inefficient. Every movement generated immense internal heat. Usually, a kill happened in seconds and the heat could be vented afterward. But Zecora was running hot. She finally spotted a speck on the horizon. It was him. She surged forward, closing the distance rapidly. "I see you," she bellowed. Elias didn't look back. He didn't speed up. He didn't slow down. He just kept that same, annoying rhythmic shuffle. Left, right, breathe. Left, right, breathe. Zecora was within 200 meters. She prepared to pounce. She would impale him with her 10-centimeter claw and end this farce. But then a warning light flashed in her vision, a biological imperative. Overheat warning. Her hearts were beating too fast. Her internal temperature was hitting the critical zone. If she pushed for the sprint now, she might seize up. She slowed to a walk, panting heavily, venting steam from the spiracles in her neck. "I will rest," she growled. "Just for a moment. He is slow. I will catch him in a minute." She stopped. She watched the human. Surely he would stop too. Any creature that moved that constantly in this heat must be dying. But Elias didn't stop. He took a sip from his tube, wiped sweat from his brow, that strange, disgusting liquid humans leaked, and kept jogging. The gap between them, which she had closed to almost nothing, began to widen again. Meter by meter. Step by step. Zecora stared in confusion. "Why doesn't he rest?" she whispered. "Does he not feel the fire?" It was 3 hours into the chase and the dynamic had shifted. It was no longer a slaughter, it was a confusion. Zecora had sprinted 3 times. Each time she had closed the distance almost completely. She had been close enough to hear the gravel crunch under his boots. Close enough to see the salt stains forming on his back. But each time the heat forced her to stop. She had to crouch in the shadow of a rock formation, gasping for air, waiting for her heavy exoskeleton to cool down. And every time she stopped, he pulled away. It was infuriating. It was insulting. "You have no claws," she screamed at his retreating back during her 4th rest period. "You have no armor. Why are you not dead?" Elias didn't answer. He was in the zone. To Zecora, the heat was a weapon killing her from the outside in. To Elias, it was manageable. He was a human. He was a member of the only species in the galaxy that had weaponized the ability to sweat. He wasn't strong. He couldn't lift a car. But he was a master of thermoregulation. His lack of fur, his millions of sweat glands, his bipedal gait that decoupled his breathing from his stride, everything about him was designed for one thing: efficiency. He wasn't running away from her. He was running her into the ground. As the afternoon wore on, the heat became oppressive. The rocks shimmered. Zecora's movements became sluggish. Her armor, her greatest strength in a fight, was now an oven cooking her alive. She weighed 400 pounds of muscle and chitin. Elias weighed 180 pounds of water and grit. She forced herself up. "I am the matriarch," she snarled, her voice raspy. "I do not lose to a soft skin." She started to walk, trying to match his pace. If she couldn't sprint, she would march him down. But she couldn't match him. Her walking stride was lumbering and energy-intensive. His was a controlled fall, gravity doing half the work. For the first time since the measurement in the throne room, Zecora felt a flicker of an emotion she hadn't experienced since she was a hatchling. Doubt. She looked at her claws, her magnificent 10-centimeter serrated blades. They were heavy. They dragged at her arms. What good were claws if you couldn't reach the throat? Nightfall on Krylor did not bring relief. It brought darkness, but the ground radiated the stored heat of the day like a furnace. Zecora was exhausted. Her energy reserves, designed for explosive combat, were depleted. She needed sleep. She needed food. She found a small cave, collapsed inside, and let her eyes close. He must sleep too, she reasoned, her thoughts hazy. He is small. His batteries must be empty. I will sleep for an hour, wake up refreshed, and track him down in the morning. He will be curled up under a rock, frozen or dead. She drifted into a fitful slumber, dreaming of water. She woke up with a start. Her sensory tendrils twitched. Something was moving. She dragged herself to the mouth of the cave. The moons were high. The desert was silent, except for a sound. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It was faint, rhythmic, horrifying. She looked down into the valley. There, illuminated by the moonlight, was a silhouette. It was Elias. He wasn't sleeping. He wasn't hiding. He was still moving. "No," Zecora whispered, backing away. "That is impossible. Nothing moves for 12 hours without rest. Nothing." But he was. He had slowed down to a walk, preserving energy, but he hadn't stopped. He was eating a nutrient bar while he walked. He was drinking while he walked. The realization hit Zecora like a physical blow. The human wasn't faster than her. He wasn't stronger than her. He was infinite. He was a machine made of meat that turned water into motion. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced her heart. She wasn't the hunter anymore. She was the deer. And he was the wolf that didn't need to sprint. He just needed to follow. She scrambled out of the cave, her muscles stiff and aching. She had to move. If she stayed, he would catch her. "Stay back," she roared into the darkness, her voice cracking. "I am the queen. I have the claws." Her voice echoed emptily. The only response was the crunch, crunch, crunch of boots on stone. She began to run again, but this time it wasn't a hunt. It was a retreat. She stumbled. She fell, scraping her precious armor. She got up and kept going. She looked back. The silhouette was still there. Same distance. Same speed. He was like a ghost. He was like entropy. You couldn't fight him. You could only delay him. "What are you?" she sobbed, the arrogance of the throne room a distant memory. "Why don't you tire?" By noon on the second day, Matriarch Zecora was dying. Her vision was blurred. Her internal cooling systems had failed. Her blood was thick with toxins from muscle breakdown. She had thrown away her ceremonial armor pieces, her pauldrons, her bracers, stripping away her status just to shed a few pounds of weight. She stumbled onto a flat expanse of salt. Her legs, the legs that could crush steel, finally refused a command. She fell forward, slamming into the hard ground. She tried to push herself up, but her arms trembled and collapsed. She lay there, gasping, her side facing the sky. She waited for death. She waited for the suns to cook her. And then she heard it. It had stopped. The crunching had stopped. She rolled her eye back. Standing over her, blocking out the sun, was Elias. He looked terrible. His lips were cracked. His skin was burned, peeling red. His uniform was stained with white salt rings. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving. But he was standing. He looked down at her. He didn't have a weapon drawn. He didn't look triumphant. He just looked tired. "Water?" Zecora croaked. It was the only word she could form. Elias unhooked his hydration pack. He had rationed it for 30 hours. He had just enough to get himself back to the extraction point. He looked at the fallen queen. He looked at the 10-centimeter claws that were now digging uselessly into the dirt. He knelt down. 10 centimeters, Elias rasped, his voice like gravel. "That's what you said. You said I didn't have 10 centimeters of steel." He leaned in close. "You were wrong, Zecora. The steel isn't on the outside. It's inside. It's the spine. It's the will to take one more step when your biology screams, stop." He opened the nozzle of his water pack. "And here's the difference between a predator and a human. A predator kills when it wins. A human. He tilted the pack, letting a stream of precious cool water fall onto the alien's parched mouthparts. A human makes a deal. The rescue beacon was activated an hour later. A Terran dropship descended, kicking up clouds of salt and dust. When the ramp lowered, the Marines rushed out, weapons raised, expecting a firefight. What they found silenced them. Captain Elias Thorne was sitting on a rock, bandaging his blistered feet. Sitting next to him, drinking from a massive jerrycan of water, was the matriarch of the Vraxian hive. She didn't attack the Marines. She didn't roar. She watched Elias with a look that no Vraxian had ever given a human before. It was a look of profound, terrified respect. As Elias limped toward the ship, Zecora stood up. She was shaky but alive. She intercepted him. The Marines tensed, fingers on triggers. Zecora reached out. She took Elias's hand, the small, soft, clawless hand, in her massive, deadly talon. She didn't crush it. She tapped the back of his hand with the tip of her claw. "You have no claws," she said, her voice quiet. "But you have deep roots. You do not break." "Does this mean the borders are settled?" Elias asked, wincing as he put weight on his leg. Zecora looked at her elite guards who had finally caught up, panting and exhausted in the distance. She looked back at the human who had outlasted the apex. "There will be no war," Zecora declared. "The Vrax do not hunt ghosts. And we do not hunt the endless ones." She stepped back. "Go, Elias Thorne. And pray we never have to run against each other again." Elias smiled, a cracked, painful smile. "Don't worry, matriarch. Next time we'll just take the bus. And that, my friends, is why you never judge a species by the size of their claws." The alien queen learned the hard way that while she might have the sprint, humanity owns the marathon. We are the persistence predators. We are the ones who don't stop. If you enjoyed this story of endurance and grit, smash that like button. It helps the algorithm more than you know. And if you want more stories about humans shocking the galaxy, click that subscribe button and ring the bell. What do you think? Would you have saved the queen or left her in the desert? Let me know in the comments below. Check out this next video on the playlist for another tale of humanity being absolute space orcs. Until next time, keep running.